Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I am Alex, founder and creator of the TickerPulse app, and today I'm going to share with you my approach to investing. And remember, none of this is financial advice. Okay, so first let's discuss goals. Before you can have an investment strategy or any kind of philosophy in life in general, you got to start out with some goals. And my goal was to build a cash pile where I can withdraw 4% per year into perpetuity. Earlier in life, I achieved the goal of paying off my mortgage and accumulating enough emergency cash and a gold reserve to be unemployed for 1 or 2 years at a time. And now people ask about why 4%. That's because most financial advisors agree that's the sustainable annual amount you can withdraw from your 401k or your savings without burning down your whole nest egg. So yeah, first think about what it is you want to achieve in life. If you just want a Ferrari or something like that and don't care about anything else, then maybe it'll be a lot easier. But some people also want to establish a generational trust. So this is like a very existential step you got to take when you do investing, or at least I took. And like I said, this is my opinion, not financial advice. So let's discuss my philosophy and beliefs. You have to have a mindset when you go into an investing, so you don't fall in love with your stocks or fall in love with certain ideas, but you do have to have some foundational beliefs, and these are mine. So I do believe markets are rigged, and they work in favor of governments and corporations, wealthy individuals, old money families. The government's not working the way it's supposed to, where us citizens are taking a role and fighting for our rights. Mostly we defer to some billionaire, then we just go about our daily lives. And one way to validate this is look up what mainstream media always says the day before a crash, before the 2008 financial crisis or the dot-com bubble was starting to unravel. What do they always say the day before a crash? Let me know in the comments. I don't see them saying cash out and batten down the hatches and everything and pile up some gold and just take it easy. Yeah, so share that one with me, what they always tell you the day before a crash. The conspiracy that billionaires want to control us is real. The humans and their technologies are always evolving. So yeah, there is, if you see the way technology is progressing, it's always towards some central control. It's always to the favor of the corporations that they can monitor us, they can sell us stuff. We're not seeing any technologies about sustainable forests done en masse by the billionaires, or cleaning up the oceans, or making the Sahara Desert into a rainforest, which would soak up a lot of carbon and solve the refugee crisis. So this is where the resources are being diverted. Humans and their technologies are constantly evolving. So that's always a fact of life too. Tech is always moving forward. Things are supposed to get better, faster, and cheaper. More transistors per square inch, more output efficiency, right? That we can get more out for the amount of work we're doing. And that is always evolving. That's always a fact. And that's what industry is always working on. If you go to any job at any corporation, they always want to do better than they did the year before. They always want to do more with fewer resources. That is evolution. Fire and cooking, right? When they discovered cooking, they used fire to cook. That was a technology. They spent less time chewing. And then they had more time to sleep and more time to tell stories, and that's how we got here. Governments and companies fund evolution that favors profits. That's kind of just reinforcing what I said. Not my quality of life. If they were really interested in our quality of life, we have the technology to work 4 hours a day, even 2 hours a day, and have more than our great-grandparents had. But it seems like they had a house, a starter house, and 2 cars, and only one person had to work, and now you have 2 people working 2 jobs, doing Uber and all this kind of stuff just to rent a mediocre apartment, and they're not even having kids anymore. Back in those days, people were having 3 or 4 kids in a little house, but it was their house. And this is another thing I really believe too. All the stocks out there, all the companies out there, they have shills on YouTube and social media trying to push their stocks. I can't confirm this. I just believe this because there's some people out there, they're just so religious about whatever Tesla or Nvidia or Amazon, and they're just, even though the place is on a down cycle or there could be a stock that's burning down, they'll be like pumping it. You got to be careful with them. And that's also why I created TickerPulse, because I want to get a mosaic of sentiment out there. I wanted to collect automatically the sentiment from many bloggers instead of getting stuck with just 1 or 2. And you never know when they start going religious because they could be holding the bag themselves and they want to just push it on everyone. Now, this red one is, you probably are already read this. Buy stuff you don't understand or agree with time to time. I lost out because I didn't believe in Bitcoin. I could have had a lot of chances to go big on Bitcoin. I didn't. Instead, I went and tried to sort out copper pennies from zinc pennies and made bags of those, and they're still sitting under my friend's porch. And that didn't really make me much money. So every now and then you've got to just, because this is, if it's being hyped and pumped, the corporations are doing this, or somebody might know something, you got to take a stab at it. Now, I did a lot of research on AI, but honestly, I don't know everything about it. But it seems like that's where those technologies can control us and they can use them against us. And that's the way I now understand Bitcoin. Everything's on a ledger so they can track you down. But anyway, the point is, it's okay sometimes to buy stuff you don't understand or agree with. You could buy cigarette stocks if they're making money and everything. If you don't do it, someone else will do it. I don't know. Some people have some moral things about it, but you can take that profit and then do something nice with it. Plant trees or promote non-smoking because life is going to go on. But like I said, this is my philosophy and beliefs. I do believe in currency debasement. If you look at every country in the world, national debts are rising. Even in Norway, they take on debt. They also have a big pension wall hitting where there are a lot more older people than younger people. And that's something that's going to have to be faced here over the next 10 or 20 years. It's going to be gradual, but it's going to be pretty prominent that there's going to be more people retiring than paying in. And they're going to have to finance that with debt, every country in the world. So currency debasement is a thing. Another thing here I really strongly believe is no one can see tomorrow. It's just impossible to see what's going to be happening in the future. You don't feel bad about taking profits or missing out on something, or it's just the world's very unpredictable. Nothing lasts forever. And I'm a big believer of buy the rumor and sell the news. So I've been buying options around NVIDIA, for example, before the earnings announcement. Then on the day of earnings, I just sell the call options. You got to get in the zone and really learn to feel certain stocks. But generally, if you get some buzz or some rumors beforehand and it starts pumping, and then once it hits the mainstream media and the taxi driver's talking about it, or the girl at Starbucks is talking about it, that's when it's time to sell. Like I said, that's my belief. It's not financial advice. It's not a hard truth. I've missed a lot of upside doing this, but I've been consistent. I've been consistent about it. Hybrid investing styles. I do generally do dollar cost averaging. Put in a little bit every month into key stocks, into my foundational stocks, which I'll show you later. I'm not a buy and hold, but rather a buy and monitor person. The world is always changing. Things are always changing. The stocks hit their price targets early. They have some parabolic growth. You got to trim. You got to be a little bit active and trim. Otherwise, you could be left holding the bag. Things are very erratic these days. This is not like Warren Buffett's economy, like back in the 1920s, where information traveled more slowly and only certain people were investing in stocks. Now everybody and their dog is in this. The fund managers, or a lot of them, are Gen Z and millennials. They're erratic themselves. So you got to watch things. Watch where things are going. Wars are just popping up out of nowhere, like this Iran thing. We were promised no more wars, and now we got like another Vietnam with economic consequences. I do trade and hold call options opportunistically, selling covered calls, buying long calls. I generally like to buy 6 to 12 month calls, just slightly out of the money if something looks like it's pumping. And then either hold it and exercise the option and get the shares, or if the thing goes parabolic and you make them 40% in 3 or 4 weeks, just take the profit. I've been talking about this. Sell after parabolic rises and when the PE ratio starts getting out of control. That is your gravitational constant, the PE ratio and the PEG ratio, price to earnings growth, where you take the PE and divide it by the growth rate. And if it's around 1, you're okay. But if it starts getting 3 or 4, like Palantir's, even with the PEG ratio, then I would say take some profits and diversify your portfolio. And I'll say this, anytime you make 10% in 1 month, which is 120% per year, you're doing really well. Set the bar low and be conservative, but be consistent. That's just my belief. So I just wanted to show you this. This is the evolution of the Dow Jones Industrial Average over the years. You can see in 1896, it's 130 years of Dow Jones here. So you can see in the 1800s, late 1800s, it was very agricultural. You had some industrial in here, but we had cattle was on the Dow and tobacco and sugar and cotton. So we were in this is like the state of the U.S. economy. We're in an agricultural economy with emerging industry, coal, iron, and railroads, some lead. So this was like we were transitioning from agriculture into industrial production. And then if you look at the 90s, it was very heavy industries like Bethlehem Steel. They don't even exist anymore. Or if they do, it's in some very small form, but they were in Gary, Indiana. I actually applied for a job there right out of college in 1994. I remember really wanting to work there. I thought that would have been the coolest in the world. I ended up going to the Navy. Sears, I had a corporate job there. They don't even exist anymore. This company was bigger than Walmart. And see, Walmart was not even on the Dow Jones back then. You had Woolworth. Has anyone been to a Woolworth lately? Kodak, there you go. So see, things are changing. So if you don't really know what you're doing, but you want to invest or something, buy the index because the index manager will switch out the companies. And the indexes generally, that's why they do well because they have a manager or management, I should say, a committee, and they switch out stocks that are more reflective of the economy, have a forward view that will grow. They want their index to go up, like the company, the Dow Jones Company and the Standard & Poor's, the NASDAQ, they all have these indexes, and that reflects on them. So you see they added NVIDIA here. This was, I think, done a year or two ago. IBM is still hanging out. I think we had some IBM back in 96. I'm not sure. No, there was no IBM back then. It was probably already kicked out and then brought back in, or brought back in later. Microsoft was added. That's been around for a long time. Visa. So now it's more informational. So here we were like industrial and services, retail services oriented, like going more into now information economy. And all of these companies here have a big IT side of them. Even I would say Home Depot, right? It's basically a database with a brick and mortar front end. Yeah, it's always evolving. That's why you have to buy and monitor. If you really don't want to do that, be an active stock picker, then I recommend going with ETFs and indexes and let a professional fund manager regulate that. Now, if you're enjoying this video and finding it useful, please subscribe. I'm just starting out. I've been following all the financial bloggers for a long time. I've been doing my own research, and I'd like to share it with you and build up a community around this so we can have discussions. I have a friend in Sweden. We share stock picks all the time. He's like a value-oriented investor, and I'm more of a tech-oriented investor. I like tech stocks, along with some safety as well. Retail is my other ones, like Dollar General or Walmart, these kind of companies. So if we get enough people together, we can share expertise. Now, here's how I rotate through. I'm always telling you trim investments and monitor investments, take profits. And this is how I'm doing it. I have a broad portfolio. I don't have farmland, and I'll talk about this in a second. So if you have speculative investments like Bitcoin or, I don't know, RDW, this rocket stock that's taking off, stuff that just doesn't make sense, doesn't have PE ratios, but it's going parabolic, take the profits and then put it into the long-term investment. So that would be like your indexes like the S&P 500, QQQ, DIA, your Dow Jones, or your Berkshire Hathaways, your Amazons. I see Amazon as long-term, or Mercado Libre, these growth-oriented companies, ones that are more conservative that won't go bankrupt overnight. Their stocks are properly valued relative to their growth. And then once those have gone up, or people start aiming into that, they go parabolic, it happens. You take the profits and start paying off your mortgage. Hopefully you've bought an apartment or bought a house early on, even if it's a fixer-upper in a not-so-nice neighborhood. At least it's yours. And start paying that down. You take the profits. So you take your speculative investments, you get your S&P 500 index investments, these more conservative ones, your Dow Jones, and when those go up beyond any reasonable level, let's say they go up like 40%, and you trim it in 3 months or something, and start paying off your mortgage. And when your mortgage is paid off, start building up your gold holdings. You got to do all of this concurrently, except farmland. Like I said, I'll get to that. You can start all of this at once. So if you have $100, you put $20 into gold and a VA or a FHA loan and get your apartment and pay down your mortgage. So out of that $100, you put $10 of your extra money a month into that. And then you allocate it. I should have wrote it out. like the percentages. But you put most of it into gold, and then the next most into paying off your mortgage, and then whatever, like the other half, 30% of that, 30 of that 50% into the long-term investments, and then maybe 20% into speculation, like call options, if you feel like a pump is coming, and then you just keep paying it off. Now, if you have a big family, let's say you have 8 kids, and get some farmland and start farming. That's where the rich people, like the billionaires, all the money goes to the farmland at the end. That's like the last stop for the money. And when I say real estate, I'm talking about your primary residence, though. You can also branch out into a rental property or buying a commercial property or something. But this is generally like how I have allocated, except the farmland. I don't have a big family. There's just 3 of us, including myself. So a farm would overwhelm us. So then just keep stacking more gold. Now, here's the macro things that I look at. First, before you invest, you need to understand the macro economy here. So you have, let me just go here to the other screen here. I'll take that out here and show you my macro screens. Okay, so you have I first look at the 10-year Treasury, and it's a bit down. But see, the thing is, what's worrying me, and I'll show you my portfolio allocation later. Let's do year to date. Let's do 1 year. So you can see it's been trending up. It went down, but we've been having like an uptrend, and now it's down again. And a lot of this is like war-based. But if this thing crosses like 4.8%, 5%, market's going to take a breather, to say the very least. Because what's happening is the portfolio managers switch from stocks to bonds. They want to get into safety because the money supply is tightening. This kind of tells you how much the water level is for stocks, how much water is in the pool to begin with. And then that water can go to the stocks. But if you lower the water level, then there's less money for stocks. So that would create a broad-based pullback, because what's happening is they're pulling the money out of the stocks and going to bonds or going to cash. They feel like something bad is going to happen. So we've seen this peak up here, 4.6. It's been coming down. Maybe there's some optimism, but we have a lot of black swans out there that can surprise you. The other one I look at is the fear and greed index. So in general, we're still in the greed zone. I've been watching this. It's on CNN. I'll drop these links below. But right now in an extreme greed phase, where everyone is buying and no one is fearful. I think Warren Buffett or Benjamin Graham or someone said, buy when everyone is fearful and sell when everyone is exuberant or everyone is greedy. Well, just be opposite. It's harder to do than say. Easier said than done. That's what I was looking for. Easier said than done. And then the other one I look at is oil prices. Let me Google this, oil, because that determines also a lot of, that's the main driver of inflation, of global inflation, is oil prices. So you can see oil prices are down, and that's probably why the 10-year is down. So we probably will have some pretty okay day on the market. A lot of it depends on the macro and the outlook, but I'd be willing to bet today would be like a little bit more chances of a green day than a red day, let's say, especially in tech stocks. But when this oil prices come down to 80 and can stay at 80 or less, then I think the markets will be more optimistic. The other one I look at is the Polymarket. And so this is like a betting site. And so a lot of people are betting like on higher inflation. So they have macro indicators. This tells you where things are at globally, regardless of the company's story. So people are betting that inflation will be between 4 and 4.5%, which is bad because that'll raise the interest rates. And then that'll put downward pressure on the stock market, especially on small caps, especially on companies without earnings, especially on companies that have to borrow a lot of money, companies with a lot of debt. So here's what will the Fed rate be before. So they're saying below 3.25 below. So they don't have really much. It's not a very high conviction here, but roughly 3.25. Let's see where the Fed funds rate is today. Let's see what we get today. It's about 3.5. So it looks like we're going to get slight rate cuts, or I guess it's going to stay right where it's at. It's 3. Yeah. So things will be unchanged. I don't think we'll get a rate hike. Let's see if we have rate hike odds here. But they're talking about rate hike odds are growing. So you can search this. Let's see what you got for rate hike odds. So it's not much, 35%, but it's been growing. Okay, so anyway, this is how I see what's going on. And I've been in a defensive mode, actually, because this greed index has been really high. That's been making me nervous. So let's discuss the asset classes. So you have cash is obviously the most obvious asset you have, and then bonds. It's something I don't understand. I've never invested in bonds except for those U.S. savings bonds when I was a kid. And then you have gold, which is, I think, better than cash, better than bonds. That's my favorite for being defensive. Stocks, which are obviously shares of companies. And within stocks, you have sectors. You have tech, pharma. This is where most of the innovation happens, either creating some new efficiency or creating some medicine. This is where stuff can really go bonkers and go upside. If they have a breakthrough medication or they find some new way to create efficiency, like AI taking meeting notes for you. Then you have consumers, you have industrial stocks like your 3M, financial like your JP Morgan, energy. You have utilities like your electric companies. Energy is like the people who extract energy. Materials like denim and high-tech materials, real estate. And then you have indexes and ETFs, and we discussed that earlier, what indexes and ETFs are. Cryptos, this is my belief on crypto. There's Bitcoin and then there's everything else. I like Bitcoin, but I'm not a fan of all the other stuff. There's just too many scammers and weirdos. But Bitcoin seems quite legit, and I like the story behind it, and I buy that opportunistically. But it's hard to know where the opportunity is because there's no real intrinsic value, but other than people believe in it, and it is ubiquitous around the world. And it's off the grid, as one would say. So you just get a wallet like SafePal and you can get in on it as long as you can find an on-ramp. But there are people who can get you on. Anyway, that's another rabbit hole. Then there's commodities like oil, gas, copper, silver. And I say silver is a commodity. I don't have it as its own because it fluctuates a lot. So I treat it more like a commodity. Gold is my mainstay. I guess some people would argue to put silver in there. And then there's real estate, commercial, residential, and your primary residence. I would always encourage people to own your primary residence and make that foundational and get it paid off as quick as possible. And get a small and modest place. You only really need 350 square feet per person in your household. So if you're planning a family of 4, 1,400 is enough. And there's a lot of old, cheaper houses you can renovate and build equity on. And not that way you'll have more money left over instead of having a big mortgage payment that goes to your house. You have more money to buy this other stuff, and you're diversified. And that way you don't get crushed if you lose your job. And then there's this collectibles, like Pokemon cards, Superman comics, fast cars. If you're like an expert on this and know what you're doing, there's money to be made here. Mid-century modern furniture, flipping this stuff and then taking those profits and rolling it into gold or paying off your mortgage or buying some S&P 500 or stocks. That's also a thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is my portfolio here, what I'm holding. So I'm pretty heavy in tech, but I've got that balanced out with what I call doomsday stocks like Berkshire Hathaway. I have a considerable amount of cash on hand. I've got some safety stocks like S&P Global. This is one of what Warren Buffett likes. They give ratings. So whether the economy is good or bad, they rate stuff. Even if they rate it wrong, they seem to be doing quite okay. So, and then I've got some energy stocks as well. So I got uranium. Nuclear is a growing thing. I think that's where the money will be made, is in uranium. The nuclear industry has a lot of overheads, a lot of costs. So yeah, I have like my tech. I have my doomsday holdings. Like I said, there's 30% cash because the 10-year has been making me nervous. Oil prices have been making me nervous. The fear and greed index is making me nervous. I feel like something is coming. And I have some speculative bets. I have some RDW based on this SpaceX IPO. I got some call options, long calls at 25. So that's just 20% away before they hit. That could happen in a day. If there's a big excitement with SpaceX or someone drops a bomb, everything goes crazy. I have some pharma stocks, Crystal Biotech and CRISPR Therapeutics. They do gene editing. That's like the over-the-horizon, the future. I have, like I said, my usual tech stocks. They're self-explanatory. NVIDIA, Amazon, Google are there. And then I have a lot of ETFs gold. I have a good amount of gold ETFs, a little bit of Bitcoin ETF, and then a semiconductor ETF, and the DRAM, the memory ETF, to capture the semiconductor story. But I'm cautiously in it. They're not huge parts of my portfolio, not like they used to be. I was 100% in NVIDIA about 3 years ago. And then I just started trimming down. And I did a big trim like about a month ago before this earnings when it was pumping. You know, trim down and diversify and get ready for whatever's coming. So generally, this is how I look at stocks. So there's fundamentals, then there's a story, like if it's a tech story, pharma story, management. Fundamentals like do they have qualified managers? Did they go to a good college? Are they smart? The story about the sector. Is there going to be demand for this? Is this a growth trend? Is it steady? And then the coverage. Look at my own app. Are the bloggers talking about it? Is being talked about in the media? Because that matters. That is a thing. And if all three of these things are good, it's probably the stock has already been bought by Warren Buffett or by private equity. So you got to pick and choose your pain. Sometimes the fundamentals will be way off, like Palantir in the early days. They were having 600 PEs or no PE, but the story was strong and they were getting a lot of coverage. So you have to sometimes just do it. You're not sitting on in a Wall Street boardroom or in Omaha, Nebraska with Warren Buffett and have inside access or can buy the shares privately. This is the reality of the investing. You got to pick your pain. Sometimes there's stuff with good fundamentals and a good story and it's not getting any coverage, then you have to buy it. You have to wait until the coverage hits it. There was a stock called Service Corp that sells everything for funerals, and it was like a growth industry. It was back in the 90s. And some friends of mine bought it, then eventually the news came to it because it was just so compelling. So yeah, it's usually if something has a good story, it has good coverage, and it usually has pretty bad technical fundamentals, so you just have to get in and out and before as the story dies or people get bored with it. That's happened a lot with NVIDIA, right? People got bored with NVIDIA. It's a good company. They got bored with it, and they were trying to sell it off and find other stuff, and they were getting into Caterpillar and John Deere, which actually had worse valuation, but it was just something that was not NVIDIA. And so you have to follow this coverage and understand that where the psychology is. So let's just round this up. I've been on here a while. So markets have always been rigged. That's a fact of life. Going back to the 1800s, the tulips, all this stuff, always been there. But that's not an excuse. You can't go hide in a cave and you just collect gold coins and hoard silver and all this stuff. And that should be part of your portfolio, not all of it. I did that a long time ago. It was too early, like 15 years ago. I was believing the doom porn too much, that the world was going to end tomorrow. And I went all in on gold, and I missed Apple. I missed a lot of really good stocks, Facebook, everything that was like the big things 10, 15 years ago. So it should be a part of your portfolio, but not everything. You got to be in the game. No one can see the future. Anything can happen at any time, but you can watch the tea leaves. The tea leaves are the indicators, like the 10-year Polymarket can give you a leading indicator, oil prices, fear and greed index. Evolution is a fact of life. Nothing stays steady and constant. Everything is always changing. That's what you have to understand, where the change is and where it's going. And gold and your primary residence are the ultimate safe haven assets. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. These are the ultimate safe havens. Having a stash of physical gold and having your primary residence paid off, that gives you a lot of, peace of mind. Mental headspace, as one would say. It'll save you a lot of money on therapy if you have a stash of gold in your paid off primary residence. Please subscribe and drop some comments. Contact me if you want to talk anymore. Thank you. And remember, this is not financial advice. So do your own homework before you invest or gamble.